Well, thank you for being here today. Welcome to the University of Pikeville. It's an exciting day for us. It's an exciting day to be here in the Cole Building. The University of Pikeville was founded in 1889 with the mission to deliver education to the youth of the mountains. Although that mission has evolved, we now have students from 43 states and 18 countries. We have 13,000 alums. So on behalf of our Board of Trustees, our faculty and staff, our student body, and our 13,000 alumni, welcome. This is not the Senator's first time visiting us. He is a friend of the University of Pikeville. As a matter of fact, he delivered our commencement address to our CHICOM, which is the Kentucky College of Osteopathic Medicine. He's also very sharing in his time. When our students visit Washington, he always opens his doors. In the midst of budgets and budget, well, I'm not even going to go there, Senator, but all those things you have to deal with in Washington, and we appreciate you dealing with those. He always finds time for our students, and he supports this institution. So you're not here to hear me. We're here for the Senator, and I would, again, on behalf of the University of Pikeville, thank you for your friendship to the University of Pikeville.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, President Hurley, and we're going to get started with the hearing, so I'll go back behind the table here. Well, again, good morning, everyone, and welcome. And let me point out why we're here. We're here because the Environmental Protection Agency has been having a series of hearings around the country, nowhere near coal country, nowhere near anybody who mines coal. They've been in San Francisco and Chicago and a whole lot of other places. And the number of the people who've testified, of course, have all been on one side of the issue. I went to a hearing in Washington, was the only member of Congress basically allowed to show up. And it took with me a friend of many of yours in the coal business from over in Perry County. And they had no questions, no nothing. This has been completely tilted against coal country in America. I want to start by thanking President Hurley for inviting us and giving us a chance to be here for this event. He has been a great leader of this university, cares deeply about this region, and is devoted to providing quality education for the people of Eastern Kentucky. And I know you'll join me in thanking President Hurley for the great job he's doing. And obviously, I want to thank University of Pikeville Chancellor Paul Patton. Governor Patton ably led this university to new heights, including obviously opening this new coal building. We will also want to thank you, Paul, for your leadership for our state. You've done a great job. And as President Hurley pointed out, I'm in a sense a graduate, having gotten an honorary degree from the medical school, for which I deeply appreciate all of you. And I want to also recognize, even though he's out of town today, the Dean of the Kentucky College of Osteopathic Medicine, that all of you know, Dr. Boyd Boozer, who's done a terrific job. He brings the students to Washington every year. They're great lobbyists in the best sense of that word, and I always enjoy seeing them when they come to town. I don't think it should escape anybody's notice that we are in the coal building. Coal literally built this place, as it has built infrastructure and economic security for so many across our Commonwealth for a very long time. Now, I organized this session, as I suggested earlier, because the EPA claimed it wanted citizen input on the future carbon regulations it intends to impose on existing power plants. However, its listening sessions were scheduled in rather unusual places to be discussing coal: New York, Boston, Seattle, San Francisco. In fact, the closest one to here was Atlanta, which would have been, of course, a 7-hour one-way and 7-hour back trip for anybody who wanted to go down there. So they were not interested in hearing anything that would dissuade them from going forward with the regulations that they have in mind. I don't think it's right that EPA would consider taking such drastic steps without listening to people who would be most affected. And obviously that's Kentucky coal miners, their families, and the many people throughout the state whose jobs and well-being depend on coal. And I couldn't think of a more fitting place to hear from the other side than Pikeville. And that's why all of you are here today. I asked them to come to Pikeville, by the way, repeatedly. Never even got a response. So if the EPA is not willing to come to Pikeville, I'll deliver Pikeville's message to them. That's why I called today's session, so that those in the region affected by this administration's war on coal will finally have a chance to be heard, just as I indicated earlier, showed up largely alone, except for my friend from Perry County, at the EPA hearing in Washington. So following the testimony today, I plan on taking the experiences you share with me directly to EPA, so it can hear from all of us how President Obama's war on coal is negatively affecting our coal miners and our economy in eastern Kentucky. I also want to thank Congressman Hal Rogers and Governor Steve Beshear for the very important efforts they'll announce next week to forge a stronger economic future for eastern Kentucky, and I appreciate what they're doing. It is obviously vital that we consider eastern Kentucky's future, but let me make this point as well. It is equally important that we not give up on eastern Kentucky's present. Worrying about the future is important, but it's important that we not give up on the present. And coal is and as we all know, coal is the key to the present in eastern Kentucky. Coal is crucial to the region's people, economy, and way of life. Coal employs thousands of people in the Bluegrass State. Coal pays more than $1 billion in direct wages to Kentuckians every year. For every miner employed, 3 more Kentuckians have a job. That's why for many of us, to put it in the words of one of our panelists today, who is the best known panelist today, coal keeps the lights on. Some who write for what I would think we would all agree are the 2 big liberal state newspapers claim that the recent steep decline in coal jobs is not about overly harsh EPA regulations. They claim there's no such thing as the war on coal. It's just the natural decline of coal, they say, just the natural decline. But that just doesn't square with the facts. Yes, we need an all-of-the-above strategy to develop our domestic energy resources, but coal provides roughly 40% of our country's electricity and over 90% of Kentucky's electricity. The Commonwealth benefits from coal, whether you live in a coal county or not. The way we have been able to compete economically has been dependent on 2 things: our central location, within 500 miles of 2/3 of the population in America, and our low utility rates, directly result of the proximity to coal. So we've gone from 18,600 coal mining jobs when the president came to office to fewer than 13,000 today. That's a depression. That's not a recession, that's a depression. If you don't believe there's a war on coal, just listen to the president himself. He's been pretty overt about it. Here's what he said. If somebody wants to build a coal power plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them. I don't know how you could be more clear than that. If that isn't a declaration of war, I don't know what a declaration of war is. Clearly, this administration, with its radical regulatory ideology, wants to eliminate coal as a viable fuel source, and frankly, it appears they don't care who it hurts, or this would be an EPA hearing here in Pikeville today. One of the first things the president did upon taking office in 2009 was to try to push through Congress what we call the cap and tax bill. So he referred to it as cap and trade, cap and tax. It was designed to hike utility rates and bankrupt the coal industry. Now, the first 2 years, the president enjoyed huge majorities in Congress, huge, but he couldn't get this through the Senate. There was that much resistance that he couldn't get it through the Senate. So he's trying to do it a different way. He's trying to do it a different way. He's unleashed the EPA to fulfill the same extreme mandates that were in the cap and tax bill. So try to do it through the regulatory side if you can't do it legislatively. Well, the EPA is not going to do anything without hearing from Kentucky first. The messages you share with me today, I'll deliver directly to EPA in Washington. I want them to hear firsthand how this war on coal is hurting Kentucky miners and their families. And we're going to hear from 3 panels today. The first, already sitting here, consists of managers and owners of Kentucky companies in the energy sector who can directly testify to the effect the war on coal is having on their industry, the jobs that are lost, and more. The second panel consists of Kentucky miners and others in the industry who are being directly impacted by EPA's drastic tactics. They'll tell us how the loss of coal jobs is affecting them, their families, and their communities. This panel will include perhaps Kentucky's most famous coal miner, star singer, and songwriter, Jimmy Rose. Jimmy, your spotlighting this issue for a national audience has made Kentucky very, very proud and drawn new attention to the human cost of the president's war on coal. Our final panel consists of elected officials from the region who will testify how the damage done to the coal industry is hurting their constituents and their communities. Now, let me say, there's a place for all of you here today, whether you're on the panel or not, because we're going to be circulating comment cards to everybody here today. And we're interested in hearing your story about how this war on coal affects you and your family. We're going to compile all of this in addition to the testimony and deliver it to EPA. I would also indicate that Congressman Rogers and Senator Paul have provided written statements for today's testimony as well. I'm looking forward to hearing what our witnesses and others have to say, and what I'm going to do is briefly introduce all 5 of our witnesses and then start with their testimony, and we'll do questions after they've had a chance to speak. The first panel will consist of Jim Booth, who many of you know began his coal mining career while attending Morehead State. Began his first mining operation in 1975. And I know you share my pride that he is currently the president of the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, so he's a statewide business leader. Monty Boyd, the CEO of Wayne Supply, a well-known company operating for a very long time. Monty is now the owner of the company. We're grateful for you, grateful that you're here, Monty. And Charles Baird and I have known each other since law school. We've been friends for a long time. Charles has been chairman of the Coal Operators and Associates since 1987. Charles, great to have you here. And Kathy Walker, president and CEO of Elms Street Resources. It's great to have you here, Kathy, to talk about your story. And David Moss, vice president and director of government affairs for the Kentucky Coal Association. And with that, Jim Booth, why don't you lead off?
Thank you, Senator. I'm really glad to be here today. Thanks for inviting us. I started a small contract mining company in 1975. It has grown to its peak of 8 million tons of production. I had 1,400 employees. But today, Booth Energy Company has 1,000 dedicated, hardworking coal miners throughout this Appalachian region. The Obama administration's war on coal is leaving a very devastating impact to our employees. Here in eastern Kentucky, over 6,000 coal miners have been laid off and have lost their jobs. That's a 42% reduction in our workforce in less than 2 years. In my operations, I'm having to reduce my workforce in a substantial way due to the restrictions that are enacted by the EPA in our permitting process. And these new restrictions on emissions on coal-fired generation plants have affected our ability to market coal to coal utilities. The average wage of our coal miners is $85,000 per year with really great benefits. These are jobs that cannot be replaced in our region. These jobs that are needed and valued, and we really need to protect these jobs. This administration has indicated from the very beginning of their plan on bankrupting coal-fired generation plants, and that, in effect, bankrupts coal companies. Kentucky is on the verge of a crisis in electricity cost. It is going to have a major impact on our ability to manufacture and be competitive in Kentucky. We've always had a competitive edge. Senator, you mentioned about the location of Kentucky. But Kentucky has the fourth lowest cost of electricity in the nation, and 92% of our electricity is made from coal. We do not make power from windmills and natural gas at this point. Natural gas is competitive, but it would have a much more difficult time competing if it had to operate under the similar environmental regulations as coal. The initial actions by the EPA in the war on coal were to limit the industry's ability to obtain permits and operate under the provisions of the Clean Water Act. Now that the EPA is facing legal challenges from that direction, their approach has shifted and has been much more stringent on restricting the burning of coal. It's limiting the utilities' emission of CO2 under the Clean Air Act. Thanks to Senator McConnell and his colleagues, the administration was unable to move their cap and trade bill through Congress, so they're now pursuing carbon control regulations that effectively are circumventing the congressional oversight. These regulations would require new coal plants to reduce their carbon emissions well below today's most advanced utility plants. As no market-ready technology can achieve the required reduction levels, regulations are effectively a ban on construction of new coal-fired plants. One of the things that I wanted to bring to our attention today is saw this on the news this morning that was very enlightening to me. You guys have probably read and heard that the EPA had levied fines on a windmill farm that had caused bald eagles to be killed. Heard this morning on Fox News that the Obama administration has declared a moratorium to disallow the fines against the utilities, against the windmills. In the case of coal, if the Indiana bat habitat happens to be in a region that we're wanting to mine, we're not allowed to get a permit. So I conclude my remarks.
Thank you, Jim. Monty?
Good morning. My name is Monty Boyd, owner of Wayne Supply and Walker Machinery, the Caterpillar equipment dealers in Kentucky, Southern Indiana, West Virginia, and southeastern Ohio. over 60% of our revenues are generated from the sale of machines, parts, and service to the coal industry. So the coal industry strongly supports all of our employees and their families in 4 states. This year, Wayne Supply celebrated 100 years, and Walker Machinery celebrated 60 years of service to our customers. At a time when I should be excited about our future, I am full of concern and uncertainty because our future outlook is bleak due to the regulatory ambush on the coal industry by the EPA. I would like to thank you, Senator McConnell, for conducting this hearing today in regards to the NSPA proposed regulations for all existing coal-fired power plants. The disappointing part of today's hearing is the EPA is not here. Common sense would say if you, the EPA, are passing new sweeping regulations against the coal industry, you might actually want to hear from the coal-producing states where your heavy-handed actions will have the largest impact. Once again, the EPA didn't listen to common sense and discounted the relevance and the importance of Kentucky coal and what it does for our nation. But coal in Kentucky is more than just mining. It's the driving force that keeps our energy rates affordable, keeps our manufacturing sector competitive, and is the economic lifeblood of Eastern Kentucky. Senator, it's disheartening to continually see the federal government and the EPA take such an anti-business stance that destroys an industry that is vital to this region's economy. The federal government appears to be choosing the winners and losers in regard to the energy sector of America. It is artificially making coal-fired power plants obsolete by requiring standards for coal power generation that are significantly below levels which can be achieved based on current technology, and causing the coal industry to install expensive, unproven systems which will increase the cost of coal-generated power. Carbon capture sequestration technology has not been proven on a commercial scale. On the other hand, the new natural gas standards are well above the current levels which are being achieved commercially. Now, certainly, fracking and horizontal drilling technology has increased the supply of natural gas and improved its competitiveness, which from an economic and energy market standpoint is a good thing. But when will the EPA go after the shale gas industry? Then finally, the government is providing large subsidies to wind and solar, and we know by the reported bankruptcies that millions of our tax dollars have been wasted on these energy sectors. So the question is, why can't the strongest nation in the world have a balanced, efficient, cost-effective, and competitive energy system versus the biased, heavily regulated, inefficient, expensive, and special interest group controlled system we have today? All of these government actions are going to significantly increase our cost of energy. And energy is required for everything we do, not just lighting and heating our homes, but for everything we manufacture, all the crops we grow, the goods and services we transport, and everything we build. Which simply means if we significantly increase our cost of energy, we increase the cost of all goods and services we use, which potentially will lead to inflationary pricing. And where does inflation hit the hardest in our economy? The lower income and poverty segment of our population. That's what concerns me the most. Now let me just take a moment to personalize the EPA and the Obama administration policies on Wayne Supply. Since 2008, our revenues from our eastern coal branches are down 71%, and our profits are down 90% in those stores. Because of this severe drop in sales, we have had to make many difficult decisions. The most difficult was to lay off employees. This was the first company layoff in 30 years, and only the second layoff in our company's 100-year history. Because of the impact, the EPA impact on the coal industry, we have reduced our employment in our coalfield stores by 170 employees in the last 2 years. These were real people with real families who thought this would never happen to them as employees of Wayne Supply because of our long history of employment security. But due to the EPA actions, it is happening, and not just in Eastern Kentucky. Due to our reduced coal business, we also were forced to lay off 17 employees in our Louisville branch store because their jobs were dependent on the coal industry. Senator McConnell, thank you for conducting this hearing today, for supporting the coal industry, and for listening to the human voices that should truly matter and that are most severely impacted by these actions of the EPA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Charles Barrett.
Everyone here would like to thank you for your friendship and all the support you've given the coal industry over the years. It's been very meaningful, and it's been consistent, and we can always depend on you to help us.
Thanks, Charles.
This all started just with the change of this administration. You know, they have, in effect, taken laws and regulations that have been in existence for decades and reinterpreted them. They haven't enacted any new laws. They haven't needed to. They've taken existing laws and interpreted them completely differently. One of the main laws they've interpreted differently is the Clean Water Act, and one of the key aspects of mining industry is you have to put material in a stream. Now, they define a stream as where the first drop of water hits the ground. It's not a running stream. It's not any water in it. It's basically what we call a gully. When you put anything in a gully, and you have to put ponds there, you have to put fields there to put your spoil material either temporarily or permanently, you have to have a 404 permit. There are very, very, very few 404 permits are being issued. And if you get one, if Booth Energy gets one, it has to meet standards that it knows it can't meet just to get the permit. Same thing is happening with 402, the discharge permits. Every affected area has to have a pond where all your disturbance has to drain into the pond. The pond has to have a 404 discharge permit. It's mandatory. They have now established a policy. It's not even a regulation. It's a policy that says that the water coming from that stream has to meet much, much more stringent regulations than ever has existed in the history of the Clean Water Act. And we all think that they just put things up on the board that they knew we couldn't meet and selected them whether they were applicable to the environment or not. And one of the main things was specific conductivity, and they've established a policy on specific conductivity, which is the ability of water to conduct electricity that can't be met. So they are taking laws that the Congress enacted and distorting them to suit their goal of putting us out of business. And this is starting to affect others. I mean, this won't be the only hearing you'll be holding. In the years to come, after you're reelected, by the way, you're going to have farmers. You're going to be holding farm meetings with people that are fighting the EPA for these same reasons, because they're going to have regulations on them that they can't meet either. And cities and small towns, it's unbelievable how many regulations that they have to abide by that are really excessive. And all these regulations are being put on us by people who have never been in business, have never been in the real world. They're full-time government employees. Now, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act is another one, and Jim touched briefly on that. But you know, you've got the existing power plants, their regulations coming up, And the standard, they're trying to do a rate, what's called a rate-based emission standard, which will mean you can only emit so much carbon dioxide for so many megawatts. And the standard that they're going to set will mean that no existing power plant that's coal-fired in this country can meet the standard. That's where they're headed. And that's what we're trying to stop, and we appreciate you. I know you're already looking into that. The new power plant emission standards, they've got it to where you can't construct one. So their goal is to get rid of the ones that are in existence and not allow you to build new ones. So what takes its place? They don't have a clue, because it's just like healthcare. They don't know the consequences of their actions. But as Lonnie said, the consequences are going to be that nobody's going to be able to afford their electricity. It's just a matter of time. But they'll have a solution for that too, Senator, and the solution is the people that have jobs are going to get a surcharge on their electric bill, so we can pay for the people who don't have jobs as a result of their policies. So, you know, that's where I'm predicting that'll happen, and I hope my prediction doesn't come true. But if you know, what they're doing consistently is they're doing exactly what they want to do. And their response when you criticize them, sue us. Well, when you sue them in federal court, it takes decades sometimes, years. So that's the same thing. Now, there's one other thing, my folks, we represent several thousand employees and their families, our coal association does, is we have a real problem with MSHA. That's another thing. We now have, sometimes in some mines, as many inspectors as we have employees working in that mine, because they have nowhere to go. And they're still hiring. MSHA is still holding job fairs to hire more people. So we're having more inspection days than we have work days. So the effects of all the above is just, you see, the best way to see what's happening around here is count coal trucks. When you drive back to the airport or however you got here, or you drive to Iceland, just count a few coal trucks. And I drove to Iceland the other day with Lynn Parrish. We didn't see one. And on the way up or the way back, we never saw one. Now, how often does that happen? So you count coal trucks and you count Wayne Supply trucks. If you see a lot of coal trucks, a lot of Wayne Supply trucks, if you don't see any, which is what you're not seeing now, or you're seeing very few. And one final statement, you know, these folks that are regulating us, the ones we deal with daily, they're good people. But they go home every night with their families and their children. They put their paycheck in their bank account. They pay for their children's education. They go on vacation. What they've done to us now is that's not happening. Our people are going to have a difficult time educating their children, clothing their family, providing a roof over their head. And I know I've confirmed this statement more than once. When the fellow came from Washington, that's where all this is coming out of. It's not, even the regional offices are sometimes very embarrassed. The words they say is, "We're sorry."
Yeah.
But the people in Washington, they're not sorry. They're sorry in a different way. You know. When they come out of Washington, they have said that we're finally able to do what we've always wanted to do, and that is put you out of business.
Yeah.
So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get back to questions in a minute and comments. And with that, thank you, Charles, and we'll go to Kathy Walker.
Senator, thank you for your organizing this listening session today here in the heart of the Eastern Kentucky coalfields. My name is Kathy Walker, and I'm the CEO of Elm Street Resources, a coal sales company that I started over 25 years ago. In addition to my work at Elm Street, I've served on several boards throughout my career, many in the energy-related and financial industries. Currently, I serve on the Executive Committee of the National Coal Council, a Washington, D.C.-based federal advisory committee to the Secretary of Energy. I'm also on the Board of Directors of the Kentucky Coal Association. In 1986, I moved to Johnson County from the Washington, D.C. area after spending most of my childhood years in Lexington. I started my own company, marketing coal mined in Central Appalachia, at first to the European markets and later expanding into the U.S. industrial and utility sectors. Although my company has been successful, over the past few years we have experienced a significant decline in demand for coal, particularly coal mined in eastern Kentucky. Our traditional customers include manufacturers of paper, cement, steel, and other products. Unfortunately, these industries too have been hit with the same EPA regulatory stick that is hammering our coal mining companies. The EPA continues to pile on regulations in the name of saving our planet, resulting in unsustainable cost increases for coal producers and coal consumers alike. We are being attacked from both sides. And our businesses go hand in hand. Industries and utilities provide the market, the home for the coal that we mine. But like most coal producers here in eastern Kentucky, these companies too are struggling with cost containment in an extremely competitive marketplace. I'd like to point out here that many industrial companies are affiliates of multinational organizations, which have manufacturing assets maybe in Kentucky, Georgia, South Carolina, but they also may have a plant in China, India, or South America. So they have options in geographical alternatives available to them to address the exploding regulatory costs of conducting business in the United States. In some instances, these companies are simply closing the doors on the U.S. plants, and as in other instances, they're opting to make capital investments for new capacity outside of the U.S. borders, away from the jurisdiction of the EPA. And ironically, when these companies do set up manufacturing facilities outside of our country, the fuel of choice is low-cost, available, reliable coal. It is unquestionable that the ongoing uncertainty about future regulatory costs to operate in the U.S. will continue to play a huge role in our country's ability to retain or create new jobs in both the mining industry and the manufacturing sector. Now, the EPA claims to be tightening the regulations on our industries in the name of saving our planet from global warming. But it is difficult to reconcile how it is that forcing businesses to leave the U.S., set up shop in another country with much less regulation, is accomplishing that goal of reducing the production of global greenhouse gases. While the U.S. has cut its carbon dioxide emissions over the past decade by 8%, global emissions have increased 32%. The reality here is that these new EPA rules do next to nothing to combat global carbon dioxide emissions. In fact, if we step back and take a holistic view of the situation, it occurs to me that we would all be much closer to achieving the EPA's objective of reducing global emissions if we retained those manufacturing jobs right here in the United States in a monitored environment. Global coal production today is roughly 8 billion tons per year and is expected to grow to 11.5 billion tons by the year 2040. China, India, Australia, and South America, among other producing companies, will be there with their coal production to answer that bell when it rings. These countries get it. They clearly understand how coal is needed to raise their standards of living and grow their economies. Internationally, coal will continue to be the fuel of choice for the foreseeable future, and coal usage continues to surpass growth in all other forms of energy. During 2008 to 2012, 13% of mining jobs in eastern Kentucky were lost. This year alone, another 24% have been eliminated, some of those permanently. For every mining job lost, another 3 indirect jobs are lost. These indirect jobs include our local restaurants, beauty shops, car dealerships, and other locally owned businesses. Our people are suffering, and our communities are struggling. Kentuckians can either sit on the sidelines or get in there and fight to reverse this course and relieve us from this aggressive, heavy hand of the EPA. Failure to do so will continue to erode our coal industry and diminish our job opportunities here in Kentucky while threatening the economic and political stability of our great nation. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Kathy. David Moss.
Senator McConnell, thank you for allowing me to provide input from the Kentucky Coal Association and its member companies. My name is David Moss, and I'm the Vice President of the Kentucky Coal Association. But I'm also a Kentuckian who shares the same frustrations as my fellow panelists regarding the Obama administration and its ongoing actions against the production and usage of Kentucky coal. In our role representing our members, Kentucky coal companies, like Mr. Booth's company, and our associate members, the many who do not mine coal but are dependent on the mining of coal for their very existence, like Mr. Boyd's company, Mr. Baird's, and Mrs. Walker, we're very familiar with the damage being done not only to Eastern Kentucky, but in many ways, the entire Commonwealth of Kentucky and our nation. In KCA's many dealings with the EPA and this federal government, we have seen a shift regarding coal from President Obama's first term to his second term. In his first term, federal agencies were focused on coal production, especially here in Eastern Kentucky. This focus included environmental regulations that no other geographic region or industry had to comply with, only here in Eastern Kentucky or West Virginia. KCA warned that this enhanced review, as the federal government called it, would have a detrimental impact on coal production in this region and also devastate the economy of Eastern Kentucky. Simply put, Eastern Kentucky's coal fields was bearing increased scrutiny, increased cost, and an unfair playing field with its competitors. Today, the result of President Obama's actions can be seen throughout Eastern Kentucky. You will hear more information from the next panelist about how much damage has been done right here at home. Yes, a low price for natural gas has been a factor, but the man-made factor, the political factor from the administration's actions succeeding in making Eastern Kentucky coal uncompetitive. If you're an investor or a leader of a coal company, where would you mine coal? Would you mine where the federal government has targeted your industry for additional regulations and permit blockades? Of course you wouldn't. The answer is obvious, and it is an extremely unfair environment for KCA's companies that are located here in Eastern Kentucky. So let's move to President Obama's second term. With Eastern Kentucky seeing tens of thousands of direct and indirect job losses and an unprecedented loss of production, the White House now turns its attention to the usage of coal, which essentially destroys the market for all of Kentucky coal. It is clear that President Obama, his administration, and his political supporters, like the Sierra Club, want to move our country away from coal by any means necessary. They were unable to pass their disastrous cap-and-trade legislation through Congress, so in his second term, President Obama is enacting similar job-killing policies without congressional approval. This administration's direct actions against current and future coal-fired power plants will not only damage domestic coal usage and put more coal miners out of work, but it will cause our electricity rates to necessarily skyrocket, the president's words, and damage an already struggling manufacturing sector nationwide. The negative impact of the administration's actions against coal usage can be seen indirectly. When the President of the United States gives a speech saying we should stop investments in foreign coal-fired power plants and we should also convince other countries to not invest as well, what message does that send to our domestic utilities? It tells utilities that the usage of coal to create electricity, that this president is absolutely against the use of coal not only in the United States, but also anywhere on this planet. As you heard from the previous panelist, the rest of the world is not listening to our president. The rest of the world is embracing coal usage at every turn. Let me conclude my remarks by thanking you again for your opportunity to share our concerns with you. while we appreciate your tireless support for Kentucky and your steadfast opposition to President Obama, it is our hope that today's information will convince the President and his appointed bureaucrats that their actions are hurting Kentuckians and will soon be hurting working people across the United States. A quote from Congressman Barr earlier in the year perfectly describes the efforts of the EPA and its appointed bureaucrats. Quote, "This has a real impact on real lives. It is easy to sit in Washington and issue regulations when you don't have to confront the human cost." End quote. So once again, we have appointed bureaucrats making catastrophic decisions for anyone and everyone with little care of how it will curtail the U.S. economy and hurt the American consumer. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. I want to start by talking about the suggestion of the two big newspapers in Kentucky that this was really all about the competitive forces, that really what's going on here is natural gas is becoming increasingly competitive, and people in the coal industry are just whining and blaming it on someone else. I want to make sure everybody understands this depression we have in eastern Kentucky, is it or is it not largely induced by this administration? Jim Booth.
Yes, the best way I can answer that is my cost of mining coal has doubled under this administration. So we were, of course, I'm selling less tons now, but the competitiveness of, we keep hearing about cheap, clean natural gas. Once natural gas is introduced to regulation, it can't be competitive with coal. Coal will be the cheapest energy. Coal has been scrutinized since its existence, and our regulations are not likely to become very much more expensive. But I think it's fair to say that regulations are 40–50% of our cost increase. So that is the reason. It doesn't just cost more to pay for safety equipment or whatever, but it's the fact that we are being regulated to decrease our production. So when our production is decreased, our cost increases.
And as some of that, Charles referred to the permitting process, is some of it sitting on permits for lengthy periods of time so that you can't get an answer, yes or no?
Very much.
Years.
Yeah. Years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Monty, largely government induced?
Well, certainly, as I shared in my remarks, some of the numbers that have occurred since this president has come into office is certainly we've seen historic downward trends, and I think Charles went through the attack from not just right now on this hearing about the new standards for utilities, but the regulatory items that have come from permitting and the lack of permitting, and I think as Jim. In those costs, there is still an awful lot of upfront costs that they have to go through before they can even submit the permit, and then they just sit on it. So absolutely from our perspective and our business trends, this administration working through the EPA, and not just the EPA, but MSHA and the DOT, we're just talking about EPA. I mean, from a business standpoint, we're seeing regulatory pressures from all of those agencies that increase our cost. Add MSHA and the DOT on things that have really risen or made the cost of business increase.
Charles, anything to add on this point?
Gas prices, if you looked at them during this last 12 months, they've been as low as $2 or something, and today they're $4.14. So, gas prices are extremely volatile. And a lot of us think the gas folks are just waiting in the grass, in the weeds, waiting for all these power plants to switch to natural gas. Then their days come, and the people that flip the light switch on, they're going to get killed. It's just a matter of time. And let me tell you something too about the way they feel about natural gas. They view, and they've said it, they view natural gas as an interim fuel. They don't like natural gas either. So it's carbon too. So it's a matter of time. But the regulations, they've enacted regulations that mean absolutely nothing. MSHA has regulations that are putting people out of business every day that have nothing whatsoever to do with safety. You have to have these chambers, these self-rescuers in your mines. Well, everybody's got them. Everybody paid for them, $75,000, $100,000 a piece, where your men can go if there's a disaster underground. Well, they come out here the last few weeks and, well, those ones we approved, we don't really like them anymore. You're gonna have to go out and buy a new one. So here's a guy with 15 men working for him. He's making money, he's getting by, but then you gotta go out and spend $75,000 or $100,000 on another self-rescue unit. What do? You put the lock on the door and you go to the house. And that's what's happening as we're sitting here today. And we need, you remember President Obama when he was running for office, he said he was going to have a line-by-line evaluation of the budget, and everything was going to be on C-SPAN. Well, neither one of those happened, but we need a line-by-line evaluation of our regulatory system to see what it's costing this country, and it's costing us hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars unnecessarily, over and above what other countries are having to spend. So I believe that we can compete with anybody, including natural gas. We just need the opportunity to be able to do so.
I'm getting a note that I'm going to have to wrap the panel up, but I want to go to Kathy. And you made the point, the larger point, which is presumably this is all about views about global climate change. And presumably this is the rationale for the pursuit of this kind of regulatory scheme. In the meantime, it is a global issue, and so it's reasonable to ask, is it not, what are the other guys going to do? We're all on the same planet. Are we just doing this one country only? What are the other guys going to do? Didn't I read the other day that the Germans now have moved away from nuclear, seeing what happened in Fukushima, and they're now going back to coal. So let's assume that the rest of the world gets very nervous about nuclear or other sources of power production, and they all start burning coal. Wouldn't this be a complete exercise in futility? Even if you believe that global climate change, well, not even getting into the argument of whether you think that's a problem, let's just assume for the sake of discussion it's a problem. How could it possibly be impacted by one country?
Yes, you're exactly right. Germany and many other European countries have been chasing that renewable pipe dream, and they now have gone completely back to coal. Germany has announced 10 or 12 new coal-fired facilities to be built. So on a global scale, the common sense of us regulating ourselves out of the coal industry and out of jobs and encouraging businesses.
Yeah, we're just exporting jobs, right?
We're exporting jobs. We're exporting technology. Senator, something that many don't understand is that the coal industry for years have complied with every single rule and regulation that the EPA has set before them. In the 1960s, in the 1970s, it was particulate emissions. Well, the coal industry, private sector, public sector, research groups, they got together, they collaborated, they came up with technology, electrostatic precipitators and bag houses to address that issue. And then in the 70s, in the 80s, it was acid rain and SO2, sulfur dioxide. Once again, the industry got together, the public, the private sector, the United States, the world leader. We used our ingenuity to address that problem as well. Technology was developed to remove over 98% of SO2 from stacks, you don't hear about acid rain anymore. And then it was NOx, nitrous oxide, other inventions. So the coal industry has continually demonstrated its ability to respond to the emissions issues. Now, we're doing that, and we're making good progress with technology, and the EPA now wants to strangle us when we indeed could be the leader for the rest of the world while they're emitting at tremendous levels.
Well, I got handed a note saying I'm going to have to move on to the second panel. I want to thank all of you for coming and putting a face on this problem in terms of the impact it's having on Eastern Kentucky in particular, the impact it may have on others down the road if they continue to head in this direction, and the fact that it appears this will have no effect whatsoever on the larger issue of global climate change, no matter how you feel about that.
This is not about the environment.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, and I'm going to call up the second panel. Thank you all for coming. Where do you want me? Where do you want me? Okay, I want to welcome the second panel. First one I would mention I've already referred to is probably the most famous person in the room. Jimmy Rose is a veteran singer and songwriter. And Jimmy came in very high in the competition on America's Got Talent, and the name of his song was Coal Keeps the Lights On. Howard Absher, former production foreman, is a fourth-generation coal man, and his son, Griffith Absher, is a fifth-generation miner, and he's also got a degree from the University of Pikeville. Gary Lockhart, James River Coal, in addition to his current position as safety director of the McCoy Elkhorn operation, Gary's held various positions from equipment operator to electrician. Anita Miller of Apollo Fuels. She's the safety director at Apollo Fuels over in Middlesboro. Tracy Nolan, Eastern Kentucky Concentrated Employment Program, is the training and program development coordinator for that organization. And with that, why don't we start off with you, Jimmy Rose.
First of all, I want to say thank you, sir, for having me here, and everybody that's open an ear and an eye to this situation. It truly is an honor to be here, and I don't consider myself to be better than anyone because I've been on a national stage. I consider myself to be fortunate, and it's a true honor to represent this issue. First off, I want to say that I am a former coal miner. I worked underground almost 2 years in Blue Gym 24-inch coal seam. I know what it feels like to go underground and come back and put in a hard day's work underground. So I also spent 4 years in the United States Marine Corps, and I served my country. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I am pursuing a career in country music. I want to tell you a story, first off, about one of my best friends. Okay, when I graduated high school, I went underground 4 days later. I did exactly what everyone else does, is you go and you take your schooling and you go look for a job. Coal mining, okay, is one of the first things that people do, okay? That's the job that you look for when you come out of high school, because that's where the money's at. That's the best way to support your family. And as a young man, that's what I wanted to do. One of my best friends, Johnny Harris, he worked for Bell County Coal, I think, and he had an accident, got his leg crushed. Went to the hospital, got it screwed up, plated, And as soon as he was able to go back to work, he went straight back to work. Okay, why? Because he has a family. He's got a home. He's got kids to feed. And I respect him and every other miner out there for what they do. We was over in Harlan County the other day. One of the things that I've been trying to do here lately is visit these schools and speak to these kids. And it's a sad thing to walk in a school, all right, and see the faces of these kids. They come up to you and they say, "Hey, Jimmy Rose, you know, this thing's cold, keeps the lights on." That's a sad thing to have to tell these kids what's going on. And people ask me what angers me. That stuff angers me, okay? The realness. The sundress on my baby girl, all right, that angers me. It's hard for me to get emotional because I've had a lot of cameras put in my face, but the issue that's going on is what angers me. But I try to give them hope. You speak to these kids and you tell them, you got a dream, you go after it. You chase it, okay? I come from the same background they did. I was raised hard. So I try to give them hope, okay? And by chasing that dream, I think that gives these kids hope. And you teach them about drugs and alcohol and all the bad stuff. And you show them, you know, there's a better way. Stand up for what you believe in and what's right. Always put God first in your life, okay? Coal is a God-given resource, and it's common sense, all right? He give it to you. Don't take it away, all right? Use it for the best reasons. It's resourceful, and it makes sense. Coming back, we stopped and ate at I think it was a Hardee's, and 2 young guys out doing what they had to do, you know, to make $1, scrapping. I've been there. I've done that. Okay, I've dig ginseng and coal washing these woods and these hollers and hills. And old guy was out of work, you know. I paid for his gas and his lunch. I felt it was something I needed to do. But I just want to give you some stories, guys, about the realness. Okay, come and take a walk in my high school and the elementary schools and the heart of coal country and see what's going on, all right? See how it's affecting the kids and the families. People losing their jobs, their homes, all right, getting their vehicles repossessed. That's not fun, man. I mean, people making the big decisions, obviously they probably got good families, good homes, kids, all right? They don't have to look them in the eye and tell them they can't buy them this or buy them that, or why we having to move, or why we having to let the car go back. It's a sad issue, all right? Things like that's what angers me, and I'm human. Everybody gets angry. Mining affects everybody. It affects the small businesses, just like the panels up there before me. It affects the towns, okay? People have to move. They have to find work and anything that they can do to provide. It don't just affect the miner or the family. It affects the small businesses and everything that's going on. The gas prices and everything going up. It's gonna be hard to live if we don't do something. My journey on America's Got Talent, everybody has seen me on that show. I was advised not to sing my original song on that national stage, okay? Simply because it's an original song. Nobody didn't know me or my song. A lot of people didn't even know coal. And I want to tell you right now, one of the judges didn't even know what coal was, but she still gave me a standing ovation. And you know why? Because it speaks directly about hardship. Everybody's been there, and everybody knows how it feels to experience hardship at some point in time or another. I've sung that song in 36 cities in 6 weeks. I've sung it from right here at home all the way to Los Angeles and to Las Vegas. Some places out where the big windmills and all that and the turbines are at. They love my song, okay? And hopefully the world's going to hear much more of it. I don't claim to be the best talent in this area. I claim to be somebody that stands up for what I believe in, chase my dreams, okay? And Coal Keeps the Lights On is near and dear to my heart. It speaks of realness. It speaks of a chapter of my life, okay? And if I can share it to the world and open an eye and ear to what's going on, I will. And I'll sing it at the White House if I get an opportunity.
I doubt if he would listen to my plea to invite you down to sing this.
I've done a little research, and I could run numbers with you all day long, okay? But that's something I think a lot of people already know, especially the folks that we're fighting, okay? In the past 2 years, 6,200 job losses in Kentucky alone, okay? Since July of 2013, like you said earlier, a little over 12,000 still employed. That's the lowest since 1927, I think, on record of the Commonwealth. That's pretty sad, okay? It's in our heritage. It's in our blood. Coal mining is a way of life, just like I say in the song, okay? And I plead to these people that are making the decisions to just listen and open an ear and an eye to what's going on here in Appalachia. And just like the panel before me spoke, okay, overseas, don't kill our way of life, okay? Look at what you're doing, and look at what kind of impact it's making here, and compare it, okay, to what's going on overseas and all the production over there. It's not going to scratch the surface, all right? So look at what you're doing and who you're affecting. Okay, this is the holiday season, and I pray for every miner and every family, everybody out there that's been affected by the coal industry going downhill the way it is. My heart and prayer with you. And I just want to conclude with saying thank you so much for having me. I hope one day I can always say that coal kept the lights on.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Jimmy. Howard Absher.
Thank you, Senator, for having me here today. It's an honor to be here to speak. Before me, I have a hard hat. And I'd like for everyone to see that. And the reason I brought this is I look kind of nice all dressed up, right? Look, for a man that goes between two rocks and makes a living. I want you to know I'm the real thing, baby. I have been out of work. I have shared it with 1,100 brothers and sisters in James River Coal. And I say to you, Mr. President of the United States, scared you, didn't it? You say there's not a war on coal. I'm a casualty of that war. Come here, look up our hollows. As Jimmy said, look in our schools. Look in our nursing homes. Look in our pharmacies. We're hurting. You say you're the president of the people. Well, we're people too. No one loves the mountains no more than we do. We live here. We crawl between them. We get up every morning and we go on top of a mountain at a strip job in the cold rain, snow, to put bread on the table. The EPA declared this war, and we have the greatest arsenal among us, and that's the right to vote. Vote, people. And I want to say something else, too. We live in a country that the government is supposed to be afraid of us, not us afraid of the government. Our forefathers felt that. Yes, I am a fourth-generation coal miner. I'm very proud of that. I have a degree here from Pikeville College, University of Pikeville. I'm very proud of that. My grandfather started picking rock when he was 7 years old. Behind me sits my son, Griffin, is a fifth-generation coal miner who is also laid off. We need help. We don't want to be bailed out. We want to work. Our coal was, tomorrow's a very important day. That is the anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Our coal was good enough to fire our plants to defend our country. What is wrong with it today? Nothing. Come and look at our little children. Look at our people. Mr. President, you're not hurting for a job. You've got one. I don't have one. And then on behalf of all of the people in Eastern Kentucky, I brought something with me today. This You see this? Look at my hands. This is coal. This keeps the lights on. Today, they will light the national Christmas tree. Remember, this keeps the lights on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Howard. Gary Lockhart.
I am a fifth-generation coal miner. My great-great-grandfather was mining coal back in the 1800s. My father worked 50 years in the coal industry. I have one brother who was 71 years old that was still working in the coal industry until this fall when he was laid off. I have been working for McCoy Elkhorn Coal Corporation for the last 41 consecutive years. I've been blessed to be with a company that has survived through all these years and been able to watch it grow, watch it become a corporate partner in the community, to work with the community. I've watched the things that it's done for Pike 1, Pike County. I've gone underground many days before daylight and come out hours after dark and completely missed to seeing the light of the day. I started out as a general laborer, worked my way up through management, worked as a superintendent. Now I'm working as safety director for McCoy Elkhorn. McCoy Elkhorn, a year and a half ago, had over 400 employees, not counting the truck drivers, not counting the contractors that we had working for us, not counting the vendors that were servicing us. Now we're down to 40 employees. All of our mines have been closed down. We're sitting in idle status at this time. We're trying to make it through this time so our politicians can do something to help us, to come to our aid, not as a handout. Give us an opportunity and a place to work. Give our country, our company, a place that it can go ahead and start to thrive again. Central coal miners of the 21st century are no different than the coal miners who helped keep our country strong and kept us energy independent from our great-grandfather's day till today. We utilize new technologies today that help us to be safe and more efficient. Our coal miners of today are a little more educated, a lot better trained, dedicated to their jobs because of the amount of time they spend in training and safety and learning the new technologies that it takes to do our jobs today. Coal miners of today make a good living. Their wages run anywhere from $75,000 per year up. They build homes, they buy cars, they educate their children. We have witnessed these men losing these jobs, seeing the look in their face when they realize that they're about to lose their cars or their homes. Many of these men who have never asked their government for any kind of assistance in their lives. Also having to go home and tell their family that their pay is going to be cut to practically nothing. There'll be very little Christmas this year, no vacations, nothing extra. Our biggest worries now are to just try to keep a roof over our heads, food on the table. Telling your family that this was all caused by the EPA, directed by our president for his political agenda. He said he would bankrupt the industry, and he has. And I have found this to be one of the most honest statements since he began to run for president. This wonderful university here owes a lot of its existence to coal, as does several other universities throughout this state. And I have a daughter that's going to school here that's going to be a nurse when she comes out here with her nursing degree, and I hope that she can stay in these mountains and help to take care of these coal miners in this area and not have to move away. Senator, what I'm trying to get at in a country as great as ours, we send men to the moon, probes to the end of the solar system. Surely we could build a scrubber for a power plant to help control our carbon emissions a lot less costly than all the money that we've already spent on wind, solar, and other green technologies. Senator, we've already lost tens of thousands of jobs, as everybody else has mentioned here, in the last couple of years. We've thrown away billions of dollars in salaries and lost revenue and taxes for roads, schools, and many other municipal projects. We watch as our local officials struggle with budgets, trying to make them work without destroying the other countless lives of county and city workers. Senator, our utility bills are spiking throughout this country. As we watch now, as we start to turn our coal plants to gas plants. When we think back at the OPEC nations and what they've done with oil, and how when they shut a valve off and set the price of a barrel of oil, then also we see our gasoline prices go up. And we have to struggle with that. What are we going to do when there's no competition from coal with gas and they decide to turn the gas line off? Senator President Obama is using every government agency at his hand not to protect the people of this country. He is using them as tools to accomplish his political agenda. In the name of environment, the EPA is a cancer upon the coal industry. It is putting man after man out of work. The EPA is shutting down company after company. The EPA is forcing our men to leave this area and go elsewhere for work, for reduced wages, or stay here and draw unemployment until it runs out. People are losing their homes, and they're being forced into bankruptcy. Senator, I beg, and I thank you in my closing, I beg that when you go back to Washington that you remember the pleas of these coal miners. When you get to the Senate and you get a chance to talk to the EPA and help us to be part of the fix of our country's recovery and not a burden on the rest of the taxpayers of this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Anita Miller from Apollo Fuels.
First of all, I would like to say thank you, Senator McConnell, and your staff for making this War on Coal conference possible and for having it in a location that actually pertains to coal mining. I've been involved in the coal industry for almost 38 years now, and I have to say this is the worst of times that I've ever seen. My husband is a superintendent for a mining company, and together we have almost 68 years of mining experience. Coal has afforded our family with the opportunity to raise 3 wonderful children and be able to send them to college. I've seen times over the years when the market has fallen off and times were slow, but they always rebounded, and usually within a couple of months. I was thinking on the drive over here about how my twins, when they were starting to walk. My son walked earlier than my daughter because every time she tried to stand up, he would either knock her down or put his hand on top of her head so she couldn't stand up. Then I was thinking that's how the coal industry is. Every time that we try to stand up for ourselves, somebody either knocks us or holds us down. I've seen friends lose their homes and their cars due to the layoffs. They are proud, hardworking people who would love to be working instead of depending on unemployment checks and food stamps. Do you have any idea how awful it is to not know from day to day whether you'll have a job tomorrow? How terrible it is to think that myself and my husband might have to find new careers and a new place to call home at our age. You can't really buy anything. You can't make plans for the future because you don't know what the future holds. Right now, the company that I work for has been waiting for a permit that was applied for in 2009. Although it's not law, the EPA made it a policy to test for selenium. Now, selenium is a natural metal, which the EPA says could cause faults in fish reproductive systems. But you can buy selenium at any health food store to help increase your memory. The initial cost for this testing, just for the initial cost for this testing for selenium, is upwards $20,000. And then once you get your permit, you still have to continue testing for it. They say natural gas is cheaper than mining coal, but the only reason they say that is because of the government restrictions they have placed on the industry. On the initial cost of that selenium testing, it drives up your mining production cost. My wish is for the people who are trying so hard to destroy the coal industry would stop for a minute and think about the hot showers they take, the lights they turn on, and that first hot cup of coffee in the morning. And remember that it came from electricity powered by coal. Stand up for your rights, your community, your jobs, and your family, and vote for the people who will fight with us against the war on coal. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Tracy Nolan.
Thank you, Senator McConnell. My name is Tracy Nolan, and I'm a workforce development professional with Eastern Kentucky Concentrated Employment Programs. And we get federal funded and state workforce dollars to deliver workforce investment services across Eastern Kentucky, and we do serve 23 counties here. And EKSEP, our main mission is to help bring quality jobs to people here in Eastern Kentucky, as well as work with businesses and employers across the region as the local workforce investment board to help employers have a quality workforce. And so during the past years that I've been involved with EKSEP, my main focus has been to build a network of job clubs across Eastern Kentucky, and we have a network of 15 community job clubs that serve the unemployed and underemployed. I'm not really sure that's probably something to brag about too much, but simply because there's a need there. But since 2011, especially when we've started to see all of the miners losing their jobs, EKSEP, your local workforce investment board, applied for a federally funded national emergency grant through the Department of Labor. We currently now, I believe, have we've heard a lot of figures today, but I think it's somewhere close to around 8,000 coal miners who are now laid off in Eastern Kentucky. For those of you who don't know, we do hold half of the state's unemployment here in Eastern Kentucky. And because of that, and thanks to the Department of Labor and Senator McConnell, your office, and I particularly want to thank Donna McClure and your office's responsiveness, it was that infused. We were able to get that national emergency grant for close to $5 million that's been infused in Eastern Kentucky to try to re-employ our coal miners. And this is, we're getting through the end of our first year. We're starting our second year of work with our HOME campaign. And HOME is an acronym which is hiring our miners every day. And our work at EKSEP, as well as our local contractors across Eastern Kentucky, have been working very, very hard to try to help our miners get back to work. But you can only imagine how difficult that has been. And so, like Jimmy, I think what I really want to focus on today in my next few minutes is just share some of the human faces and really help you understand the plight of the miners and their situations and what they're going through. I spend most of my time across Eastern Kentucky commuting. I live in Ashland and actually commute across Eastern Kentucky every day. So I really, when Mr. Booth spoke about, or I'm sorry, somebody here on the first panel spoke about, you know if we're producing coal, if you can count the coal trucks as you're going down 23. Well, I travel that route every single day, and so it's always a habit of mine early in the mornings is, when coal's been producing, and a couple years ago, I would count those coal trucks. And I mean, there are some days I'd get 70, 75. I mean, you just, for miles, you would not believe the convoy of trucks that were standing there waiting in line to load up there at the coal docks. And so over the past year, or almost 2 years now, they're very far and few between. And just this week, and it's on. I had to stop. I saw 7 coal trucks lined up beside the coal dock, and I stopped, and I took a picture because I was like, I have not seen 7. Now just 7 coal trucks. But you know what? I got really excited because I knew, as somebody who works inside of our employment offices every day and works hand in hand in small groups and individually with coal miners, I knew that, you know what, at least that was 7 coal miners, 7 families that were getting an income today. Another quick situation that I wanted to share with you, just so you really understand what's happening here in Eastern Kentucky. These coal miners, it's hard. Mr. Booth, when you mentioned that the average coal miner makes a median salary of about $85,000 a year. That's very true. And our coal miners are coming into us. They're all ages. They're seasoned coal miners who've been around for 30, 40 years. They're young fellas who've just started working, but they're used to making good wages. The problem is the very few jobs that we do have in Eastern Kentucky, when we do find a job, it's $9, $10, $11, $12 an hour. Tell the man who's been working for 30 or 40 years that, oh, here's a $12 job. It's extremely, extremely difficult to find jobs for our miners. And one other quick situation, this just happened yesterday, but when we do find jobs for our miners, they don't even have the fuel that they need and living in rural areas to even get to the jobs. One of the situations we had yesterday, and we were having a meeting, and we all were in our boardroom, and this meeting literally came to a stop because we had a coal miner who was trying to make a decision, and we couldn't get him certified, and we were having some eligibility issues. It was bureaucratic red tape about whether he was eligible to qualify in this national emergency grant, whether we could serve him or not serve him. And it's really silly when you think about it, but in order to make him eligible and provide him with supportive services, he was going to turn down the job basically because he did not have the fuel. The job was like 50 miles from his place, his home. Traveling in from, I think he was here in the Pike or Floyd County region, traveling into Knott County somewhere. And he was literally going to turn down that job because he just didn't even have the money in his pocket to get back and forth. And we were trying, and thank goodness, and it even took a call up through the state to the state employment to trying to get this person out of this red tape that we were dealing with. So it is situations like that, and I just want to leave you with this. One of the things that I did this week was worked with the miners. These are amazingly talented men, skilled men who have so much talent, and unfortunately, just because they've been unemployed for a long time, they're leaving the state. They have to go where the jobs are, and we're sending them. One of the things that we do with the National Emergency Grant, unfortunately, is provide them with relocation packages so they can go and get to where they need to go to work. And a lot of them are leaving the state. And I was working with a man this week to help him. He's interviewing, and he was an engineer, and interviewing for Toyota. And Toyota has been a wonderful partner with us. But anyways, he was just explaining to me how he was building all these hydraulic systems and the work that he's done over the years in the mines. And again, we're seeing these highly skilled men, unfortunately, who are having no choice but to leave the area. So, thank you.
Well, these panelists have all put a human face on this story. Jimmy, I wanted to ask you, when you sing in an audience around the country where people probably have no idea what produces electricity, do you find some receptivity to what you're talking about, or are you treated like a pariah because you're advocating the production of what the president thinks is
That's a great question because I've had several people ask me that. It's crazy because in 36 cities on this tour that I've been in 6 weeks, I've never had anyone speak out or lash out at me in a negative way. Everybody that's, especially even that's come to the meet and greets, no one's ever turned a negative side to it. They've all been positive and very proud that I'm putting a face to what's going on.
Yeah, the reason I ask, as you all know, I'm the Republican leader of the Senate. The Democratic leader of the Senate said coal makes you sick. It seems to me there's a prevailing view out there that we're producing a toxic substance here or something, that this is, and largely ignoring the fact that 40% of the American electricity is coming from coal. Thus my question about just kind of rampant ignorance here, in large portions of the country is kind of mind-boggling. I mean, my counterparts are very accomplished person. He's been in the Senate for a number of times. He's been elected leader of his party in the Senate, and he believes coal makes you sick. I mean, since you're out dealing with other parts of the country, I was curious as to the kind of reaction you get, and it's been largely positive, you think, right?
Very largely positive, and it's been really a good feeling to get the response that I have, because I was myself interested on how they would accept me and other places that have no idea what coal is doing to who we are and what we're trying to do. But now it's been amazingly an eye-opener to me, the positive support and just the outpouring that I've gotten in every place that I played, every city, and everywhere from here to Los Angeles to Las Vegas. It's been really
Well, keep it up, because I think this rampant ignorance is a huge problem in fighting back in this war. Second thing I wanted to touch on, they're telling me I have to go to the next panel, but the second thing I want to touch on that all of you have mentioned, and that is the loss of employment and what happens to these folks. Tracy, you mentioned many of them are relocating. Obviously, these are the best paying jobs in Eastern Kentucky, so if you're trying to find another job, you're not going to find it at comparable rates, comparable pay. What happens to our area here? I mean, do we end up lots fewer people, right? And I suppose what's conveyed to the young people is there's not a future here, right? Yeah, so I mean, this is going to lead to the sort of the depopulation, is it not, of one of the greatest places in America to live, because of this animus, this hostility toward a product that produces 40% of America's electricity. This is indeed a war, and what I want all of you to know is we're going to fight back. We're not going to roll over. We're going to fight back. He's not going to be there forever. The coal is going to be in the ground a lot longer than Barack Obama is going to be in the White House. Thank you very much. Appreciate your coming. Okay, I want to welcome the next panel. We're now going to hear from elected officials who will be able to tell us about the impact of all of this on their work, their revenues, and in general, the quality of life issues that they have to wrestle with that are affected by declining revenues and declining employment. We're honored to have with us the President of the State Senate, Robert Stivers from Manchester. Many would argue the most important Republican in state government at the moment. One of his leadership team, Brandon Smith from Hazard. We have State Representative Jill York. I'm glad to have her here. State Representative Fritz Steele from Perry County, thank you for joining us, and my old friend Judge Brock from Bell County. So we've got an opportunity here to hear from the state and local government and the impact of all of this on the work that they do. And with that, President Stivers, why don't you start us off?
Thank you, Senator McConnell. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today for this listening session. I've listened to many of the panelists prior to us, and I want to make one clarifying comment. This is not just something that is the President of the United States, Barack Obama, having this war on coal. He has an ally in the United States Senate who is Senator Harry Reid of Nevada. Without the support of Harry Reid, he cannot continue this agenda that has produced this war on coal. And you are the primary antagonist and opposition to Senator Reid. And my father has told me that you define yourself by the company you keep. You cannot go around and saying you are supportive and a friend of coal and keep company with Senator Harry Reid and Barack Obama. I'm glad to sit here and see many county judge executives and other individuals. I want to start, and I know we are limited on time, into talking about what coal has done and the severance tax. In this state, in the eastern part of the state, it has built thousands of miles of water lines, sewer lines, water plants, and sewer plants. I see Judge Ward here from Letcher County, and he can tell you how it helped support a state-of-the-art physical fitness and healthness center in Whitesburg. Similar situations all through eastern Kentucky. That is what has happened with the severance tax that has come from hardworking miners working each and every day. Now, from a fiscal standpoint at the state level, our severance tax has dropped from $300 million to $200 million a year. That's $100 million in loss in revenue. This is an impressive statistic. It's impressively sad that we're losing it. What has that done? 50% of that goes back to this region. Primarily that loss has been in eastern Kentucky, but it will soon reach western Kentucky. $50 million has been lost going back to this region in severance tax because of the formula sends half of those proceeds back to the region it comes from. So people like Judge Ward and other individuals are seeing their budgets, as Judge Brock will talk about, being drastically cut. With this substantial revenue loss, it has other impacts to local businesses. You've heard many of the individuals here testify about losing the jobs. Average pay for a coal miner is around $75,000 a year. 6,000 jobs have been lost. Another staggering statistic, if you multiply that out, that is $450 million in wages that will no longer be circulated in this community. I want to repeat that, $450 million. That's a staggering figure. And as you have heard, and you've mentioned Senator McConnell, what are the other impacts? I had a call from some people who were working with XCEP, and they said they hired 20 miners to go to Georgetown. I'm happy that those 20 miners got jobs at Georgetown, but they have moved out of the region. Their school-aged children move out of the region. The average daily attendance calculation for how school systems are funded will drop because those children are on an out-migration path along with their working parents. So it affects local school systems and how much funding they will receive. Teachers that work there, bus drivers, and people who do the day-to-day working like janitors and cooks. This is a tremendous problem in dealing with the aspects of a governmental function in eastern Kentucky. And with the advent of this war on coal and his support from Senator Harry Reid, it creates tremendous problems in preparing a budget when you see that there has been a substantial drop in our tax base in a period in time that we cannot afford to have that drop. I will leave you with just a couple of things because I know that we are under time constraints. I have heard the Speaker of the House in the Kentucky State House of Representatives speak that there are other markets And I believe some of the first panel talked about other markets. But this is a problem that MSHA, OSHA, the Corps, and the EPA have created, that it does not matter if we have other markets, because those groups have put a padlock on the doors of the mines so they cannot ship to new markets where there are potential for sales. And until there is a change in the policy at the federal level, these markets will not matter because of the federal regulations that have impeded the ability to get a permit, but once you have gotten the permit, to mine the way it needs to be mined to be competitive with other sources. Lastly, I want to add this. You know, many of us will sit here, and there are many other aspects to this than just, you know, what happens here in the region. This extends well beyond eastern Kentucky. It reaches from the Ohio River to the Tennessee border. It reaches from here in Pikeville to Paducah. It has industrial impacts, and it has personal impacts. I have a daughter, and I'll put more of a face on this, that goes to University of Louisville. I have a daughter that goes to the University of Kentucky. I have children that have worked in the coal mines. And so when I look and see what impacts they have had, I know personally, as these other individuals who came before us, that this attack on the coal industry has personally affected me. My children wouldn't have the scholarships and the opportunity to have gone to the University of Louisville and the University of Kentucky if it hadn't been for their grandfathers who worked in the mining industry. The mining industry has put food on my table and clothes and shoes on my children's feet and helped educate them. So I see the problem from not only a political standpoint, but the personal standpoint. And as I will finish, it goes well beyond the eastern Kentucky coal fields. It reaches all parts of this state, and the impacts on our fiscal viability and the competitiveness we will have in this state in years to come. Thank you, Senator McConnell, for allowing me to participate in coming here today to Pikeville.
Thanks, President Stivers. Senator Smith.
Senator McConnell and colleagues and leaders here, thank you for this opportunity. You said in the last panel about coal making people sick. Well, I would like to argue the other side of that briefly. If you think of the PET scans and the machinery and the dialysis and the vials of medicine we have kept cool, I wonder how many people coal has made well. Folks, I am Senator Brandon Smith. And today I have the distinction of coming from the area that's probably lost more jobs than anybody. And I've lost jobs due to the punitive, draconian regulations put together by misguided EPA. And to hold them accountable is one thing. But I think for you to come here, my hope today for this meeting is that people will be made aware on a national level of the disastrous economy outside these doors right now that have been created by this failed policy. Because everybody in this room knows it. We'll all drive out of here and see this as we go home. Jimmy Rose had mentioned earlier about 1927. The reason they use that number is because that's the earliest one they've got. These are the least amount of jobs that we've ever had. And for those of us that watch energy and follow it, we know this is unnecessary because there's opportunity across the globe for energy, and we know that we have it. The President's approach to our region has been devastating, to say the least. We get to see it firsthand in our schools, and we get to see it as elected officials because as the money shrinks down over the last couple of years for the pots for us, simply because they've decided that we no longer need coal in America, we're seeing these pots shrink that come back to these counties, especially just the single county coal service money, which is around $130 million in the last 2 years that's just dried up. The bigger number that's important for us is we use that money to leverage federal money for water and sewer projects. So we're no longer in the game. If we don't have our money to put up the 80-20 match where we put up 20 and you help us with the 80, we're no longer at that table. So when you magnify the actual disaster that's hitting these counties and needs, we don't even know the full effect of it yet, of what we're going to get into. But we do know as we go back that we're going to continue to fight. Senator McConnell, you're pretty much one of us. You know, in eastern Kentucky, I'm from Hazard. A lot of the people in this room are from the mountains, and we're a quiet people. We're a thoughtful people. We're given often to spending a lot of times with ourselves. Some people say we're kind of clannish, and a lot of our small celebrations are community-oriented. But that cannot be mistaken for or misunderstood as us being disengaged or uninformed. It's the exact opposite. What I argue is this, and I think everyone in here will agree with, is that we're not given to words, it's deeds that affect us. It's not fancy speeches or quick turns of phrase or some sort of great one-liner that you've got. It's actions. Now, this president that we have right now is kind of like the David Blaine of economic success. He's entertaining and he's flashy and he says all the right things, but in the end, it's an entertainment. And I mean no disrespect to David Blaine, I think he's great. But at the end, when the show's over, I want people to grasp, once the show's over and he leaves, what are we going to be stuck with? That's what concerns me the most, because I will leave here and I will go back into an area that's been decimated by a president who has zero energy experience. None. He has no energy background, yet he has single-handedly steered us into a devastating economy here where there's no need for it. The opportunity for coal is vast. If they don't want to burn coal, he mentioned earlier in the year that they were going to deal with emissions. I got very excited about that, because through biocarbon and chemical looping, you don't burn coal anymore. You simply expose it to a chemical wash. Kind of like the hand warmers you take with you when you go deer hunting or skiing. What do you think is in those? That is a chemical reaction that gets hot enough to boil water and make steam, and you never set the coal on fire. So when he started talking about that, I thought, wow, this is a real opportunity for us. But boy, was I fooled, because he doesn't care what we do with it. He's just simply not for coal. And I appreciate that. I want to wrap up because I know we've got a lot of great things yet to be said. But thank you for caring enough to come here. I'm not surprised the EPA didn't come here, because I can't imagine that they'd want to face the people they've done this to. I can't imagine that they'd want to be held accountable or have to stand here and face some of the people in Hazard, or Jeff, or Busy, or Bonneman, or any of the other ones, and try to explain to them what their thinking was. Because like I said, we're not disengaged and we're not uninformed. Matter of fact, we're very tuned in, and we really, truly appreciate you bringing this issue home today. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Smith. Representative York.
Thank you, Senator. And thank you on behalf of the great people of the 96th District in the Kentucky House. I get to be their voice for today, and I'm grateful for your listening to be able to carry back our frustrations and our concerns back to D.C. for us. Senator, I am the granddaughter of a coal miner who lived and worked in and around the Louisa area in the great county of Lawrence. More than that, I'm a small business person, I'm a wife, I'm a community volunteer, and I'm a citizen legislator. And as a citizen legislator, one of my great joys is to be able to go into our schools and talk with young people about how the process works, how we go about governing ourselves, and how the power truly comes from the people. And without the people, the government itself would not exist. So when I go into those schools, we talk about how great ideas turn into laws. We also talk about how bad ideas are caught up in the process and never become laws and never become the will of the land, because the will of the people should be the will of the land. Now, these young people that I talk to, they recognize the good ideas, the bad ideas, and we sort out good legislation from bad legislation. We debate, we analyze, and we vote. And that is the way we come to good policy in a fourth grade class. And in the Kentucky House, we try our best to do the same. I'm not so sure that what's going on in D.C. follows those rules. I'll tell you that those kids get it. They understand that that process is fair. They understand that that is sound policy making they're working toward, not agenda pushing, because the agendas, they get filtered out in the debate. Now, here's the irony and the insult to this. Because those kids, and I'm talking about a great group of folks at Fallsburg Elementary in Lawrence County, those young people are going to continue to feel the impact of these horrible legislative in-runs that our president is making. The fact that he's just running around the Constitution and legislating by tweaking old interpretations of regulations, no debate, no vote, no recourse. That is an agenda. I understand that. It's working very well for them. And the agenda, of course, as many panelists have said here today, is to cripple the coal industry. Now, let's forget for a moment that coal is the bridge to our energy independence, always has been. It is what gets us to where we're going to be in the future. But let's say that this agenda of saving the world from global warming, from carbon dioxide, all of those things is the overreaching goal. We know that that is. Well, scientists will tell you that if we are to save the entire world, then we are probably going to have to impart a lot of things that are going to be counterproductive, like to achieve the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere that these scientists claim are necessary to reverse global warming. We're actually going to potentially wreck the global standard of living for billions of people. And that leads to poverty, starvation, and failure in quality of life. So what we're faced with is the folk that will say, like your colleague, Mr. Reed, that coal makes us ill. Well, if we follow that for just a moment, and we don't follow his rationale, then it seems like that their treatment is far worse than the malady. It has far more ranging consequences. And the worst part of it is that if we look at the nations of the world, we will notice immediately that energy consumption and energy production is tied completely irrevocably to quality of life and to success and to economic output. And yet they would have us go in the opposite direction. So if the agenda is to crash the economy, they're well on their way. I appreciate all of the panelists that have spoke before us. I appreciate the veracity of their ideas and their opinions and their willingness to fight, and we are grateful, again, to you for championing this cause for us in D.C. Because, as I believe one of our first panelists said today, they talked about coal as being the lifeblood of Eastern Kentucky. Well, Poet Laureate Jesse Stewart actually said once upon a time that if you could think of the nation as a body, then Kentucky would be its heart. So I sat over there and I listened to the panelists today, and I imagined the heart of this nation, Kentucky, and its proud workers and its miners and its economy and its communities. And I see the EPA and its regulations as a band around that, constricting ever tighter, almost a tourniquet. And it twists. It twists with the delay of mine permits, and it gets a little tighter, and it twists again. And we're now changing the definition of what is fly ash and what may it be used for. And then we're reinventing this regulation. And then we're setting impossible standards that our coal-fired plants, should they run headlong after them, would probably never successfully meet, because the goal would just move again before they could tool up and be ready for it. Those twists, those constrictions are squeezing the heart of our communities. And each time that they get tighter, then we see the repercussions we've heard of today. We understand that it's going to result in higher utilities. It's going to be burdensome to businesses. It's going to bring layoffs. It's going to force closures. And each one of those incidences doesn't just affect numbers for the bean counters in D.C. It affects real-life people. It affects mothers and fathers, and it affects children. It has devastating impact because, again, that domino keeps tumbling for us here in Kentucky. And with a mine closure, a trucking company closure, then a sandwich shop closure, mechanics out of work, retailers, daycares, kids in need. Coal works, Senator. Coal works for Kentucky, and it does far more than just keep the lights on. It powers dreams, it powers ingenuity, and it powers us to where we need to be today, as you said, and in the future. The Senator mentioned earlier how dollars keep turning over in your local community. Those of us that are small business people realize that when each dollar is spent locally, it flips over 7 more times. It'll come back in a collection plate at church. It'll show up in a sandwich shop. It'll help sponsor a ball team. It is, again, the lifeblood of that community. That's easy math My kids at Fallsburg would understand that. I understand that. My hillbilly sensibilities see the common sense of that. So today, I probably could have skipped the last 4 words, Senator, and that was the message that I wanted to bring you from the people of the 96th, and that would be to tell President Obama and the EPA to back off Kentucky coal.
Thanks. And now we're pleased to turn to Representative Steele from Perry County.
Thank you, Senator McConnell. My name is Representative Fitz Steele. I represent the 84th District, which is Perry and Harlan County. I've got right now close to half of Harlan. When I took this job, it is a job. We are hired. I was number 2 and 3 in this great Commonwealth in coal production. Since the Obama administration, the EPA has taken over. I'm 3 at 6 at the last report. I'm a Democrat, but today I am here. I'm a card-carrying surface miner, and I have been for over 25 years. It's not mountaintop removal, Senator. You're a friend of Hazard. You've been there too many times, you and your wife. It's mountaintop development. I have the 8th largest hospital sitting on top of a mountaintop development job done by Perry Lee Greer, Kentucky Prince, years ago. 16 years old, I worked part-time at Summer there with a fella named Paul Watkins from Wolfe County. Mr. Boyd knows the man and the father that I work for. They're the Duss, they're friends of yours. 5 years we done a study with the University of Kentucky about raising black Angus beef on top of a reclaimed mine land. Successful. We're not blessed with flat land, Senator. You know that and I know it. I'm worried right now about the weather coming, the rain. I've got a house on the riverbank. To this day, if we don't make flat land, we don't have it. We have people coming in from Berea, Indiana, all over telling us what we need to do. One thing they need to do, and I'll be glad to take them to Perry and Harlan County with me, they need to stay home. And we don't rape and we don't mind. We don't tell them what to do in their cities, but I'm going to tell you something. And Senator Stivers, President Stivers talked about you're only good as the company you keep. Last night at dinner, I had dinner with this man right here and his wife. They're my friends. I don't care what party they're with. They're my friends. We're all Kentuckians. We're all coal people in eastern Kentucky, and you can walk up any hollow, which you've been here for years, Senator, and our people, it does not matter what hollow you walk up. If you knock on that door and you're hungry, they're going to open it, they're going to feed you, they're going to keep you warm, and they're going to help you. You go to Louisville, you go to northern Kentucky. Lexington's getting it now, thanks to the Kentucky Chamber when they brought those buses around about 3 or 4 years ago. And I'd like to thank them for doing that. And Charles Baird, my poor old buddy Dave Gooch looking down from heaven at us right now. But Senator, as Representative York stated, and my colleague behind me, Representative Couch, Leslie Clay, and Laurel County, and Senator Smith, I have felt the brunt of this in Perry and Harlan County. No longer is it a great county. It's Pike County. It's number 1. They're not number 1 no more. They're number 2. Union County's number 1 in coal production. Not since the early 60s has Pike County not been number 1. I'm going to get back to being number 2 and 3 because the same road old deep miner taught me, Cruzy Baker, the same road that brought you in will be the same road that takes you out. And that's what's going to happen to Barack Obama and his administration. And another thing, this water we're drinking here, President Hurley, I'm not throwing off on you, the city of Pikeville, but the water conductivity level that the EPA has passed on our coal miners, that water more than likely is illegal, so's that bottled water, but you don't see them going after Pepsi and Coke. You see them going after us. Only eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. Senator, I work for the people of the 84th District and the people of eastern Kentucky and all of Kentucky, as do you. The economy's not getting better. If you believe that, you're crazy. You might get 20 or 30 jobs here or there. Where's the thousands we've lost? I didn't miss school that day. You know, and the EPA, as Representative York has spoken, when I pass a bill or she passes a bill, or Tim, Representative Couch passes one, we take it through a committee, vote on it, take it to the floor for discussion, then it goes downstairs to the Senate. You have not had the right to do your job because they've got behind closed doors, they've made these laws, and they've enforced them on us, which is illegal in my book. They probably don't want to read my book, but it's illegal. But you've not voted on one bill concerning the EPA.
Yeah.
And they're killing my people, but I'm going to tell you something. It's not going to last. And I'm going to close right quick. This evening, we've got terrible storms coming. It's supposed to drop to 18 degrees. And I want the media, I want you all to get this, all the environmentalists, your Kentuckians for the Commonwealth Sierra Club, all of them, tonight when they go turn those thermostats up because it's going to be down in the teens, you think about those coal miners that you're putting out of work, and you put out of work, that's sitting home, that can't afford their electric bills, that are cuddled up with their kids with blankets by a coal stove or a fireplace, keeping warm. You think about that tonight because coal is America's ace in the hole. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Steele. Now, the impact on local government, Judge Brock from Bell County.
Thank you, Senator. That's going to be a little hard to follow, I'm afraid. But I'm going to attempt that. My name is Albie Brock. I'm the Bell County Judge Executive. I appreciate the opportunity, sir, to provide testimony regarding the devastating impact that the EPA regulations are having on families and our economy in eastern Kentucky. My position has placed me on the front lines and in the trenches of a battle between a rapidly growing needs of my county and my citizens as unemployment explodes and my budgets shrink and revenue decreases. Today, I'm here testifying before you not as a bystander, but as an expert witness, a colleague reporting conditions from the field where I serve as county judge. I think it's important for us and those that don't know for perspective. We need to understand that our economy in eastern Kentucky is more dependent upon coal than Detroit is upon the auto industry. In eastern Kentucky, if things continue, by the first quarter of 2014, we will have lost 7,000 coal mining jobs in just over 2 years. As has been stated a couple times already today, economist estimates that one coal mining job supports 3 up to 3.5 other jobs. For just 1 second, let's think about that. That means beyond the 7,000 jobs that will be lost by the end of the first quarter, that would be 24,500 jobs in our region affected. Now let's go one more step. The average family size is 3. That means 94,500 people, nearly 20% of the entire economy or the entire population in eastern Kentucky will have been directly impacted by coal industry job losses. If you did the math based on the estimates that were given here today with those numbers in mind, it would be over $1 billion lost out of eastern Kentucky's economy. $1 billion. Many of our neighbors, many eastern Kentuckians, are leaving their homes, their communities, and their families to work in other parts of the country. Already we are seeing a dramatic increase in childhood homelessness as families lose their homes. In some schools this fall, nearly 50% of the children had at least one unemployed parent as a result of these coal layoffs. It's important to note these are not young people fresh out of high school debating their career path. Every day I am approached by mature men and women with young families. These are workers that feel the effects of time and toll on their bodies. They have retirement just within their sights. These folks approach me almost daily. They both have made choices about their careers, worked hard, made sacrifices, and now, because of recent decisions made by the EPA, they face hardship and uncertainty. I have personally, as I know some in this room have, witnessed them selling their life's accumulated possessions in yard sales. Their credit is being damaged beyond repair as they are forced to dependency on free lunch, food stamps, and other government programs in an attempt just to get through another week. What is the future of Eastern Kentucky? Knott County, neighboring Knott County, is representative of our region. In 1960, just before the war on poverty was declared, 76% of Knott County citizens lived in poverty. By 2011, only 24% were living in poverty. Now that the coal workforce in Knott County was suddenly reduced to half of what it was in just 2011, poverty is on the rise again. I cannot imagine that the EPA calculated the human impact of their decisions that have so negatively impacted the coal industry in Eastern Kentucky, put thousands of families at risk, threatened decades of progress. But Senator, if they did, they callously disregarded that calculation and violated the most important moral imperative of our government, which is to protect its people. Today, energy in America produced by coal is as clean as it has ever been, and the technology is in place to make it cleaner. And I'll conclude my comments with that, sir, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Judge. Well, let me just sum up what we've heard here today. What we've heard is that no new legislation's been passed by the federal government. They tried. And back in 2009 and 2010, when the president's party had a very large majority in the Senate, 60 votes, that's the magic number in the Senate, and a 40-seat majority in the House, they couldn't get it through the Senate. Not because of Republican opposition, but because of Democratic opposition. In other words, this was so toxic, so off the wall, so unacceptable, that even when the president's party completely controlled the legislative process, they couldn't convince enough Democrats, Representative Steele, to vote for it. So, this is an arrogant effort by an ideologically driven administration led by a president who's been quite clear going back a number of years that he doesn't want any more coal-fired generation plants. And as we've heard, if these regulations ultimately stand, there won't be any more. Existing plants won't be able to meet the standards, and there won't be any new ones built because there's no existing technology to meet those standards. So if this isn't a war on coal, I don't know what a war is. And I hope that everybody in this room knows that we intend to engage and fight back all the way through. And as I said earlier, the president will be there 3 more years, but the coal's still going to be in the ground. Things can change in our country. That's why we have elections. Winners of elections make policy. Losers of elections go home. So there is a recourse here, and the recourse is at the ballot box. Now, I want to say finally to those of you in the audience, I hope you will write down your comments and any anecdotes, stories you have that underscore your own experience with the war on coal. We're going to collect all of that, including the testimony, and we're going to give it to EPA whether they want it or not. And in every single way we can, we're going to continue to push back. The majority leader of the Senate who says coal makes you sick may not be the majority leader of the Senate after the next election. You may have a different Senate who believes that it might be appropriate to put some restrictions on legislation about what the bureaucracy can now apparently do completely unimpeded because the Democratic Senate, the current Senate, is not interested in any pushbacks against EPA. Well, a new Senate might well be. So I want to leave you with hope, even though this is a desperate situation, even though it is by any estimation a depression. a depression. There is hope. We will fight back, and we're going to live to have another day with a bright future for Appalachia that includes coal as well as other things. But coal is absolutely essential to what we do and to our way of life. Thank you so much for being here.